Hey, how's everyone doing when it comes to this? Doesn't matter if you're here when it's live or not. Just lost our balls. We've just got to put our balls under our armpits. Stop our upper body collapsing when we read, and then it aches. More than aches, but. So, urban shaman. The preparation. Thanks for so much appreciation for all your likes and shares and subscriptions, as these really help the growth of the channel, for it to get to other people that need it or want it, and just for showing your support. It's a free way to show your support, and we're so grateful for that. It really helps us, especially the younger ones. And if you don't, that's okay too, because that helps us have to learn how to manage our triggers and everything. So it's all good, whatever. The preparation. Apologies for any mispronunciations of the Hawaiian language as well. Ho amo wai kahi kakao. Let's all travel together like water flowing in one direction. This is a book about shamanism, especially the Hawaiian tradition of shamanism, and about being an urban shaman. In order for you to get the most out of this book, I'd like to define what it is that we're talking about right at the beginning. According to the French historian, Monsieur Iliade, shamanism is a practice found all over the world, including Asia, the Americas, and the Pacific. The word shaman is derived from the Tungusic language of Siberia and is now used as a convenient term by scientists and laymen alike to describe the practitioner and his or her practice. Most cultures have their own term in their own language for such a person, such as kupua in Hawaiian. A lot of people have different ideas about what a shaman is and does. But like Iliad, I tend towards a strict definition. Not every medicine man is a shaman, but a shaman might be a medicine man. Not every tribal priest is a shaman, but a shaman might be a tribal priest. Not every psychic healer is a shaman, but a shaman might be a psychic healer. For the purposes of this book and my teachings, I define a shaman as a healer of relationships between mind and body, between people and circumstances, between humans and nature, and between matter and spirit. In practicing his or her healing, the shaman has a view of reality very different from the one most of the world uses. And it is this unique viewpoint, which will be covered extensively in the rest of this book, which really sets the shaman apart from other healers. It also leads to some rather unusual healing techniques commonly associated with shamanism, such as shape changing, communicating with plants and animals, and journeying to the underworld. If some of these things sound strange, don't let it bother you. You will find as you continue that many, if not most, of these practices will have a curious familiarity. This is because shamans base their art on natural human experience. You will discover that you already know more about shamanism than you thought you did. Hawaiian shamanism. Shamanism is a distinct form of healing, and Hawaiian shamanism is a distinct form of shamanism. The outstanding quality of the shaman, regardless of culture, is the inclination towards engagement or creative activity. Knowledge and understanding are not enough, nor does passive acceptance hold any appeal. The shaman plunges into life with mind and senses, playing the role of creator. There is a type of soul content to admire the shape and place of a fallen tree. The shaman is more like a sculptor who views the tree and is seized by the desire to transform it into some semblance of an internal image or a useful tool. There is respect and admiration for the tree as it is, as well as the impulse to join with the tree and produce something new. This activism is expressed in the primary function of a shaman, that of a healer. Regardless of culture, location, or social environment a shaman is, by purpose, a healer of mind, body, and circumstance. It is this bent towards social and environmental benefit, in fact, which distinguishes the shaman from the sorcerer of Castaneda's model, who follows a path of strictly personal power and enlightenment. And yet, while as shamans and healers, the majority follow the way of the warrior. Some, a minority which includes the Hawaiian shaman tradition, follow what we might call the way of the adventurer. A warrior shaman tends to personify fear, illness, or disharmony, and to focus on the development of power, control, and combat skills in order to deal with them. An adventurer shaman, by contrast, tends to depersonify these conditions, i.e., treat them as effects, not things, and deal with them by developing skills of love, cooperation, and harmony. As a simple example of the different approaches, if you had to deal with a person who was emotionally upset, a warrior shaman might help you build a strong psychic shield to protect yourself from the other person's negative energy. The adventurer shaman, on the other hand, would be more likely to teach you how to harmonize your energy so that you remain calm and even become a source of healing for the other person. In addition, the warrior shaman's path is often quite lonely. While the adventurous path is, by its very nature, quite social. Nevertheless, it's difficult, if not impossible, to tell the difference between masters of either path, because the more powerful you are, the more loving you are, since there is less and less to fear. And the more loving you are, the more powerful you are, since there is greater and greater confidence. I have walked both paths, and I choose and teach the Hawaiian adventurer way because I believe it is the most practical and beneficial. But I have great respect for the warrior shamans and their healing. The Urban Shaman. The title of this book is Urban Shaman because that is the focus and purpose of my teaching. Although shamanism is usually associated with primitive or wilderness settings, its application in urban environments is both natural and needed. First of all, a shaman is a healer, regardless of culture or environment. Secondly, there are more people living in urban areas today than in non-urban areas. Suburbs and towns are considered urban. And it is these people who need the most healing. And thirdly, shamanism, especially the Hawaiian variety, is well adapted to modern times and needs for several reasons. 1, it is completely non-sectarian and pragmatic. Shamanism is a craft, not a religion, and you can practice it alone or with a group. 2, it is very easy to learn and apply. Although, as with any craft, the full development of certain skills may take a while. 3, the Hawaiian version, in particular, may be practiced anywhere at any time, including at home, at work, at school, at play, or while traveling. This is mainly because the Hawaiian shamans primarily worked with the mind and body alone. They did not use drums to induce altered states, and they did not use masks to assume other forms or qualities. The nature of shamanism is such that while you are healing others, you are healing yourself. And while you are transforming the planet, you are transforming yourself. Apprenticeship. In days long past, when people lived in fairly isolated villages and one's worldview was limited to one's valley or mountain or island, then it was appropriate for someone who had mastered the shaman path to have 1, 2, or maybe 3 apprentices over a lifetime, because that small number could fill all the village's needs. Today, however, we live in a global village with billions of people, and at the very least, we need thousands of urban shamans to help maintain a harmonious, healthy existence. People just like you. I was raised as an urban shaman. My father was exceptionally well travelled and well versed in the cultures and traditions of most of the world, and he underwent deep training in the Hawaiian shaman tradition. He was highly skilled in the ways and crafts of bush and jungle, forest and farm, desert and tundra. And I learned a great deal about nature from him. But he was first and foremost an urban man, a holder of medical and engineering degrees, and quite at home in business and government circles. I came into his life at the beginning of a war, and he left mine at the end of one. A large portion of the years between was spent in travel between urban centres. In the 17 years that we knew each other, the shamanism I learned through example and training was mostly applied in the environments of cities, towns, and schools. I speak of training, but it wasn't in classes or sit-down sessions with my father, acting as instructor and as a student. The kind of training I had would be considered very traditional because it took place in the course of ordinary activities. In the middle of a conversation about vegetables, say, my father might give me a technique for plant communication to practice on my own and then discuss with him later. Or he might set up a situation during the day which would give me an opportunity to apply recently learned skills and then comment on my application or non-application. And he would frequently drop intriguing hints, ideas, and suggestions for me to follow up on by myself. It was training because it was consciously intended, and I certainly learned from it, but it was not organized like a school at all. After my father's death, my shaman training continued in the same way with members of our Hawaiian family, but the application was still primarily in cities, towns, and schools, plus an interlude in the Marine Corps. I used the knowledge I gained in very practical ways, as it was meant to be used. It helped to increase my health and my strength, and helped me to recover quickly when I forgot my knowledge and became unhealthy or injured. It helped me at the University of Colorado to carry an overfull academic load and hold 3 jobs at the same time, and to graduate with a degree in Asian Studies and a Pi Beta Kappa pin. I used the knowledge again as I worked my way through the American Graduate School of International Management in Arizona for a bachelor's and a master's degree with honors. Much later, when I got my PhD in psychology at California Western University. When my marriage was 3 years old and my first son was 2, we moved to West Africa to live for 7 years. About half of that time I spent in the bush, jungle, forest, and desert, and I learned much more about different aspects of shamanism there. But the primary application was still urban. I have used it to keep my relationship with my wife happy and full, to keep my sons, eventually 3, in good physical and academic health, and to have them be close friends with me and among themselves, to heal and teach pets, to help family, friends, and neighbours to be healthier and more successful, and to further my career and to reach out to share my knowledge with people around the world. I use it to keep vehicles and computers in good working order, to ensure the cooperation of airlines and weather during my travels, and to increase the speed of learning of the shamans and others I train. I use it in innumerable ways to benefit myself and my social and physical environment, wherever I am. I have learned many things in my life and have studied many systems of religion, e.g., Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Confucianism, Islam, Voodoo. Philosophy, mainly Taoism, yoga, Zen, Western pragmatism, and healing, massage, herbs, energy work, faith healing, hypnosis, to name a few. and shaman craft has enhanced my knowledge of everyone. Today, as I live in Hawaii and direct Aloha International, a worldwide network of shaman healers, which promotes the Hawaiian healing tradition through courses and seminars, museums, and local chapters, urban shaman craft is evident in all our activities. In this book, I intend to show you that the ideas and practices of Hawaiian shamanism are well suited to use in modern urban societies, as well as in settings considered closer to nature. As previously noted, some of the concepts, examples, and exercises will seem familiar, and some of them might seem quite strange. The material is taken from 2 shaman training courses that I give, and is presented in approximately the same order that I give it. In this book format, however, we can explore many of the ideas in much more depth than is possible in a workshop. An open door policy. I am presenting freely and openly many things that are considered deep secrets in some traditions. Some fear a misuse of the knowledge. Some fear the knowledge will be less potent if everyone knows it. And some fear retribution from a hierarchy which gave an order not to let things be known. However, a true shaman keeps no secrets about knowledge that can help and heal. The difficulty is not in keeping knowledge secret, but in getting people to understand and use it. As for misuse, that only comes from ignorance. The more knowledge everyone has about how to change things, the less inclination and opportunity there will be for misuse. Widely spread knowledge actually has more potency than secrets locked up and unused. Knowledge held secret is about as useful as money under a miser's mattress. And the sacredness of knowledge lies not in its reservation for a few, but in its availability to many. More likely, such a fear of free expression has to do with a baser fear that the guardian of knowledge really hasn't much to guard or doesn't understand what he has. And finally, shamans recognize no hierarchy or authority in matters of the mind. If ever a group of people could be said to follow a system of spiritual democracy, it would be the shamans of the world. The Hawaiian heritage. The Hawaiians have a very rich spiritual, psychological, cultural, and practical heritage, and I can only present the small part of it that I was privileged to receive. Their heritage is so rich, in fact, that a number of traditions have grown up within it, and not all Hawaiians or students of Hawaiian agree on what the heritage consists of. So what you receive from me comes through my adoptive Hawaiian father and his ancestors, through my natural father and his Hawaiian brother and sister by adoption, and then through me and my particular personality and outlook. So even though this is traditional wisdom presented in modern terms for today's conditions, I take full responsibility for everything I say. A great part of the heritage maintained by the Hawaiians is in their language. It is deceptively simple, having only 12 letters and no form of the verb to be. Yet, it contains the most profound concepts you can imagine about spiritual awareness, psychological constructs, the nature of reality, love, power, achievement, and on and on, because it will be so familiar to most of you. I have limited its use to those areas where an English translation just isn't quite good enough. If you want to try your hand at pronunciation, I will risk the wrath of Hawaiian language purists and tell you that it's easiest to pronounce the consonants as in English, K, P, H, etc., and the vowels as in Spanish, R, A, as in father, so R, E as in pray, so A, I as in pitta, so I, O as in moat, so O, mo, O, U as in duty, ju, U, U. So that's R, A, I, O, U, U. And so this is the beginning of my story. And here is the knowledge I have to share. May it help you to find as well as enjoy greater peace, love, and power. The first adventure, the evolution of Hawaiian shamanism. So let's see if I can do this better. Waihu, wale, kahiku. Wonder how that was. Old secrets are now revealed. Waihu, wale, kahiku. Old secrets are now revealed. Thunder crashed. The wind roared. Torrents of rain filled the air, and mountainous waves rose and fell. Yet still, the mighty Maui pulled the heaved on his magic fishhook. Finally, with the sound of 1,000 waterfalls, the islands of Hawaii rose slowly from the sea. Maui had triumphed once again, and mankind had new land to explore and cultivate. The evolution of Hawaiian shamanism begins with the myths of Maui, magician, trickster, demigod, miracle worker, luck bringer. Maui was known as all these things from one end of Polynesia to the other. The only male figure of Polynesian myth to be so renowned. The only female mythological being in Polynesia with as widespread reputation was Hina. Hina, if it's pronounced, no, Pitta, Hina. Was Hina, goddess of the moon and mother of Maui. The stories told of Maui, as abundantly recorded in Beckwith's Hawaiian mythology, Anderson's Myths and Legends of the Polynesians, and Fernandez, an account of the Polynesian race, make it clear that he was an archetypal shaman in the same ancient tradition found elsewhere in the world, with a Polynesian touch. Besides pulling up the islands of Hawaii, a discovery myth, he slowed down the sun so his mother could dry her clothes. Another discovery myth of finding lands in high northern latitudes. Visited the upper world and tricked the gods into giving up the secret of fire. A myth of creative intuition through shamanic trance. Visited the underworld to overcome various monsters. Another myth of shamanic trance for healing. Was able to use magic and magical items and spoke freely with birds, animals, and the natural elements. Maui was the most popular figure in Polynesian myth because of his helpfulness, his adventurousness, his irreverence for authority, and his accessibility. As a demigod, more properly, a human with magical abilities, he was never worshipped, but he could be called on for luck. In New Zealand, where the Maori carved his likeness in wood or jade in the form of a human embryo and often wore it as a charm, he was called Maui Tiki Tiki. In Hawaii, where no likeness of him was ever made, he was called Maui Kupua. Both names can be translated as Maui the Shaman. The kahuna orders, the kahuna orders. Very early in Polynesia, some traditions such as those of the Kahili family, which adopted me, and those recorded by Leonani Melville in Children of the Rainbow, are said to go back as far as the lost continent of Mu. Although, in fairness, there are many who disagree with that. There came into being a philosophy of life called Huna, the secret, or the hidden knowledge. The name did not refer to any desire to keep the knowledge away from others, but rather it referred to a knowledge of the hidden or unseen side of things. The expert or master practitioners of this philosophy were called kahuna in Hawaiian, tahuna in Tahitian, and tohunga in Maori. At some point, these experts formed themselves into three loosely formed separate groups. The existence of these three groups is noted by many sources, e.g. Marlowe's Hawaiian Antiquities and the Kamehameha School's Ancient Hawaiian Civilization. But most of the specifics that follow were given to me by Ohealaka Kahili and Wana Kahili, my aunt and uncle by Hawaiian-style adoption. When I was 17, I was hunaid, adopted, by the Kahili family. After my natural father had died, this is not a legal form of adoption, but for the Hawaiians, it means being taken into their family as one of their own. One of the groups mentioned above focused on the arts of physical therapy, ceremonial religion, politics, and war. In Hawaii, it was known as the Order of Ku. A second group focused on the spiritual and material aspects of crafts and sciences such as fishing and farming, shipbuilding and navigation, wood carving and herbalism. This was the Order of Lono in Hawaii. The third group, the Hawaiian Order of Kane, focused on magic, mysticism, and psychology, and these were the shamans. Each order had many subcategories, and while there were healers in each one, the art of healing through spirit became the primary activity of the shamans. Ku, Lono, and Kane, pronounced Kane, we got it right! Yay, well done, you are doing good. Were archetypes of personifications of body, mind, and spirit. The full name of Kane was originally Kana Wahine, which may be translated as man-woman, and refers to an understanding of polarities, similar to the yin-yang concept of Taoist shamans. Kane was an archetypal god of forests, high places, water sources, and peace. This is significant because the Hawaiians, as a rule, only inhabited the shorelines of their islands. apart from special forays for sandalwood, tall trees for ocean-going canoes, and feathers for capes. The only Hawaiians who spent much time in the forests and uplands were the shamans. As a guild, the Order of Kane was roughly divided into apprentices, journeymen, and masters, though different teachers might change the number of categories. When I was being trained, I started out as an apprentice and mastered different areas as I progressed. Hawaiian shamans, like shamans everywhere, have no hierarchy among themselves. The apprentices are students and colleagues, not followers, and the master is a master of knowledge, not of people. The Hawaiian word for master, in the sense of someone with spiritual and material expertise in a given area, is kahuna, as mentioned above. That word is used very loosely nowadays, but in proper usage, and to have any real meaning, it should always have a qualifier added. For instance, a master healer who uses herbs, massage, and energy work is a kahuna lapa'o. A master of prayer and ceremony is a kahuna pule, and a master shaman is a kahuna kupua. As an aside, the big kahuna of the surfing beaches would be a kahuna heyenalu, and the black magician or sorcerer was called a kahuna ana. A great deal of nonsense has been written and presented about the kahunas of Hawaii, ranging from the red flash in the eye one is supposed to see on meeting a real kahuna, to their healing broken bones instantly without fail, to raising the dead, and to the infamous death prayer. Since much of the credit or blame for these things is laid on the shamans, I would like to clarify these issues here and now. To begin with, the belief in the red flash, which has even appeared on television, came about because of a play on words, so greatly enjoyed by Polynesians and our little alters. The word used for flash is makule, which means red-eyed, and refers even to conjunctivitis. But the same word also means rainbow, and that is a symbol for the presence of chiefs, gods, or spirits. As applied to a kahuna, it is a word of respect. The instant healing of a broken bone is possible for any healer under the right conditions. Specifically, it can occur when there is an abundant energy and faith, and no doubt. The kahuna's reputation for this skill is mostly due to a single story in a book by Max Friedman, long entitled The Secret Science Behind Miracles. In the book, he tells of a female kahuna who instantly healed the leg of a man who broke it while he was drunk. Obviously, the kahuna had the energy and the faith, and the man was probably too drunk to have any doubt. Even kahunas can do it every time without fail. However, raising the dead has taken place in every culture, sometimes spontaneously without a shaman or healer present. In such cases, the dead person is actually in a deep coma or trance, or on the way to the other side. It might be wise to believe Jesus was right when he said the girl he was bringing back to life was only asleep. A typical kahuna shaman technique for reviving someone apparently dead was to push the person's wandering spirit back into the body through the big toe. Amazingly astute when you consider that squeezing the big toe is a well-known method for reviving someone who has fainted. Now, for the big one, the so-called death prayer. This was only engaged in by the Ananana, the black magicians or sorcerers who were despised by the kahunas of all the orders. These renegades were usually apprentices of one of the orders who had received some knowledge and who had been dropped or kicked out of their guild because of their negative personality or behavior. It was the Europeans who first gave them the title kahuna, and the missionaries who put out the idea that all kahunas were evil sorcerers. The death prayer itself was no more than a cursing chant designed to work openly and telepathically on the victim's fear. No fear, no effect. There were certain kahunas who specialized in undoing the attempts of the ana, either by working directly on the sorcerer or by empowering the victim. And sometimes these counter sorcerers were called kahuna ana as well. Excuse me for just a moment. That's okay. That's good. I hope you don't mind me read a story to you a little bit. No problem. Shaman training. Shaman training in Polynesia may be formal or informal, depending on the area. In Old New Zealand, Maori candidates attended the Whare Wonanga, or that I think it's Whananga. No, I think it's a F when it's WH, not when it's a W. Whare Wonanga, or psychic school, and underwent rigorously controlled training and examinations. The Hawaiian tradition was much more family orientated, with candidates picked out of or adopted into the family of a master shaman and trained informally by the shaman or his or her advanced students. In the Maori system, you were given specific things to accomplish and were tested on those things. In the Hawaiian system, you were given experiences, demonstrations, hints, and suggestions, and were then left to develop your own initiative and self-discipline to master those things or not. When you felt you were ready, you came to the master and asked to demonstrate your skill. Then he or she would either give you some suggestions to improve your skill or acknowledge your expertise and give you a new challenge, if you asked for it. The Hawaiian system, in my opinion, is much the tougher of the two because the guidelines are so unclear. For instance, my Hawaiian kahuna uncle, Wana Kahili, once said to me without any preamble, "It is a good thing to understand the energies of stone and stone-like things." So I asked him, "Does that mean you think I should study them?" "No," he replied. "Do you want me to?" I persisted. "No," he said again. At first, I couldn't figure out why he had mentioned it. But thanks to previous experiences with my father and Mabala, my African shaman mentor, I finally got a flash of inspiration and asked him, "How does one get to understand the energies of stone?" "Well, you might begin by..." And then he offered several suggestions for starting. If I hadn't asked the right question, he would not have helped me to extend my knowledge into that area. In Hawaiian shamanism, initiative is highly prized and rewarded. It's all in the questions, not the answers. A novel aspect of Polynesian shamanism, compared to the more well-known Amerindian shamanism, is its lack of masks and its use of drumming and dance. Masks as representations of gods, spirits, or animals were not used anywhere in Polynesia, though some people think of the Melanesian masks of New Guinea are Polynesian. If the shamans or priests of Polynesia wanted to convey the presence or activities of gods, spirits, or animals, they would do so by sound and gesture only. Even the elaborate facial tattooing of the Polynesians was intended as an enhancement of beauty, not as a mask. We're going to do that, but it's going to stimulate our peripheral nervous systems. Yeah, well done. You can design it, aren't you, too? Yeah. And drumming was not used as a means of going into trance. It was used for communication, for maintaining rhythm, and for energizing. As for the sacred hula, a performer would go into a kind of trance by meditating on the god, spirit, or intention to be represented before the dance. The dance itself was a carefully choreographed affair whose power came from the dancer's skill in connecting with the spirit or intent being expressed. A deeper trance or focus might occur as a side effect, but the primary purpose of the sacred hula was to teach or move the audience. Ecstatic or trance-inducing dance was not part of the Polynesian culture. Polynesian shamans were trained as healers in 7 areas, and though to become a kahuna shaman, you had to develop a certain degree of mastery in all 7. Not everyone was equally adept in each area because of differences in natural talent and interest. Basically, the shaman was trained as a psychic, as a releaser of mental and physical blocks, as a manifester of events, as a shape changer, as a peacemaker, as a teacher, and as an adventurer. The form of the training would differ with each teacher, but invariably the process would emphasize self-esteem, inner authority, and the power of words to direct energy, evoke imagery, and create beliefs. Generally, apprentices were given chant formulas that we would recognize today as affirmations, images to meditate on and explore, and elemental, animal, or plant forms to emulate or model. Any formal training would usually take place from dawn to noon, but the apprentice was expected to apply his or her learning at every opportunity throughout the day or night. Breathing exercises were also important for increasing spiritual energy and directing thought, which today we just heard someone comment on as being the 6th sense. But we do always say 5 physical senses, and the 6th sense, thought, isn't a physical sense. We would say it's more of an energetic sense. So it's interesting. As a psychic, the shaman was trained in telepathy and clairvoyance, but also in journeying to other worlds, inner and outer, in communication with spirits, in channeling, in dream work, and in communication with plants, animals, and the natural elements of Earth, our beautiful Mother Gaia. All of these were actually conceived of as forms of telepathy, probably the most important of all shaman skills. Tools such as casting stones, scrying stones, and divining wands were often used to train and enhance the mental skills. You're so mental. The younger ones are looking forward to getting creative and doing something similar, in case you wondered what that was. As a releaser of blocks, the shaman was trained in the use of energy to relieve physical, emotional, and mental stress, and in methods of changing limiting beliefs. Energy release was most often based on lomi lomi, a Hawaiian form of massage combining elements resembling Swedish and Assyrian massage, rolfing, polarity therapy, we got the books on that, acupressure, laying on hands, and other variations. Excuse me a second. clear the airway passages. However, personal and environmental geomancy was also used for such release. The dissolving of limiting beliefs could be done in a number of ways, but a common method used was a kind of talk therapy, often including affirmations that could be done by oneself, one-on-one, or in a group. As a manifester, the shaman was trained to do things like change the weather, increase prosperity, perhaps by indulging a more abundant crop or attracting a bigger catch of fish, and bring about various events like finding an island or causing a meeting of chiefs. Among several methods used was a form of contemplation or passive focused attention, similar to certain yogic practices in which an idea is calmly held in awareness until it attracts enough energy to manifest in form. Also included in this training was astral travel and psychokinesis. We were doing autobiography for a yogi last night, and it's interesting how this has only got 12 letters or something really simple, which is like half of the English alphabet, because English is 26, so it's just under. And in Sanskrit, they have like double the just under double, or just more, it's like 50, 56 or something. So yeah, the differences from the macro to the micro of variation in tonation of words to get the different tonations or connotations through the vibration of language and words and letters that go into it. As a shape changer, he or she was trained to take on various roles through singing, acting, or dancing, to take on the characteristics of animals or objects, to merge with the elements of nature and influence them by resonance, and at the highest levels of the skill, to disappear or appear to others in a different form. As a peacemaker, the shaman was trained to create harmony within him or herself, within others, between people and nature, and within nature. A shamanic society in Tahiti, the Ariohai, specialized in this peacemaking process. With song, dance, and poetry as their medium, they would travel from island to island and give their performances. Respect for them was so great that any current wars had to cease as long as they were present. Through the recounting of myth and legend, they would remind combatants of their common origin and purpose, and through ribald and irreverent humour, they would attempt to make the antagonists see the error of their ways. This emphasis on peace is one of the distinguishing characteristics of Polynesian shamans. Whereas most shamans of the world follow the way of the warrior, with its focus on power and the conquering of self, Polynesian shamans follow what I call the way of the adventurer, with its focus on love, aloha, and the expansion of self. Tito mama! Yes, that's us, isn't it? As teachers, shamans were trained and demonstrate and share their knowledge, helping people to discover their own power to change their lives. A shaman would very seldom become a kahuna ahu, a master teacher who speaks in front of groups. More often, the teaching would be done by example, suggestion, and counseling. As an adventurer, the shaman was trained to be flexible, to be comfortable with change, and to direct it in a positive way. To be free to explore new ways and means of doing things, and to constantly update and expand his or her knowledge by travel and study with other teachers. The fall and rise of Hawaiian shamanism. Given such powers and abilities, people often ask, actually, I'm going to leave it there because a friend's arrived and I thought we had a couple pages left, but we obviously miscounted because we've still got a couple of pages left. No, it's not, it's doubled. It's 2.5 times. We've got 5 more pages. So I'm going to finish it off later on, next time, on the fall and rise of Hawaiian shamanism before getting on to the actual second one. So Thank you so much. And we're going to do the namaste, which is more Indian and yogic rather than shamanism, but I don't know what theirs is. Whoa, aloha! Love. So see you next time. Take care.